They say some friendships are built in a day and forgotten in a week. Then there are the ones that take root so quietly, so naturally, that by the time you think to look at them, they have grown into something neither man could explain without laughing first. Tom Selleck and Sam Elliott have known each other for nearly 60 years. They started out as two unknown young men who could barely get a camera to look at them. And now, in 2026, one is 81 and the other is 82. And people are still asking, what is it between these two? What kept a friendship like that alive for 6 decades in an industry that eats people alive? The answer, as it turns out, has everything to do with who they were before Hollywood decided who they were. Thomas William Selleck was born on January 29, 1945, in Detroit, Michigan. His family made the move west to Los Angeles when he was still young, and that city, with all its sunlight and ambition, was where he would spend the rest of his life, trying to figure himself out. He was athletic, good enough to earn a basketball scholarship to the University of Southern California, but the pull toward performing was always there, competing with everything else for his attention. Before he ever stood in front of a camera in any serious way, he was working as a model and appearing in commercials for products like Safeguard deodorant. He was charming and almost absurdly good-looking, which opened certain doors but closed others. Hollywood has a way of looking at a man with a face like Tom Selleck's and deciding it already knows what he is. Tom spent years quietly insisting otherwise. Samuel Pack Elliott was born on August 9th, 1944, in Sacramento, California. Where Tom was smooth and collegiate, Sam was something rawer and harder to categorize. His family moved to Portland, Oregon when he was young, and there was something about the Pacific Northwest, its open land, its particular quality of silence that seems to have settled into Sam early and never left. He grew a mustache that would one day become one of the most recognizable pieces of facial hair in the history of American cinema. And he developed a voice so deep and unhurried that directors would later spend years searching for the right project to put it in. But before any of that, he was just a kid from Sacramento trying to find his place. The two men found each other, more or less, in 1969. Neither of them was famous. Neither of them had done anything the industry would call significant. They both landed minor roles in an episode of the Western television series Lancer, episode 14, titled Death Bait. And though their screen time was minimal and their characters barely registered, something else happened that day on that set that no script supervisor could have written down. Two young men, both drawn to the same kind of story, both figuring out the same kind of craft, recognized something in each other. It was not dramatic. It did not announce itself. It was simply the beginning of the longest friendship either of them would have in the business. Tom's role in that Lancer episode came with a story he still tells, because it captures something essential about who he was at the time. The auditions were held at the historic Randall Ranch, and one of the key things the casting team wanted to know was whether an actor could ride a horse. For a Western, that was not a trivial question. Tom Selleck, at that point, could not. Some actors in his position might have lied. John Schneider famously did exactly that to land his role in The Dukes of Hazzard. But Tom was not built that way. He told the director, Bob Totten, the plain truth. No, he couldn't ride. But he added that he wasn't afraid of horses, that he was a decent athlete, and that he was willing to learn if given the chance. It was the kind of answer that reveals character. He got the role. Sam, watching this unfold, was already a more fully formed Western presence. He had the look, the voice, the instinctive stillness that the genre demands. Tom would say later, freely and without bitterness, that Sam seemed to know exactly where he was going, while Tom was still figuring out which direction was forward. Sam was the more formed actor between the two of us, Tom has acknowledged over the years. There was no jealousy in it, just an honest read of where they each stood. What neither of them could have known in 1969 was that this minor shared credit on a forgettable episode of a Western TV show was the first line of a story that would take decades to fully tell. The 1970s were unkind to Tom Selleck in ways that, looked at now, seem almost comically unfair. Like many young, able-bodied men his age, Tom was drafted during the Vietnam War. He chose to join the California National Guard in 1967 and was placed in the 161st Infantry Regiment, eventually earning the rank of sergeant before being honorably discharged in 1973. He served 6 months of active duty, and when he came home, Fox had quietly relieved him from his contract while he was gone. He returned to Los Angeles with his service behind him and his career essentially reset to zero. He kept auditioning. He kept appearing in commercials, dozens of them through the early 70s, doing all the things a young actor does when the industry knows his face but hasn't figured out what to do with it. Then his luck shifted, briefly, when he landed a role in the 1970 film Myra Breckinridge, and it was here that one of Hollywood's strangest and most unlikely benefactors entered his life. Mae West, the legendary actress then in her late 70s, had personally selected the cast, and she took a particular liking to Tom. She brought him to premieres. She mentioned him in interviews in the same breath as Cary Grant. Tom has said that without Mae West, his career might have taken an entirely different path. While Sam spent those years doing what Sam Elliott has always done, taking the work seriously, building something piece by piece, showing up. He appeared on Gunsmoke. He picked up roles where he could find them. He was patient in the way that only someone who genuinely believes in what they are doing can afford to be patient. Then, in 1979, something shifted. Tom and Sam were cast together in The Sackets, a television miniseries adaptation of Louis L'Amour novels playing two brothers. It was the first time they had actually played characters together, not just shared a set, not just occupied the same episode. They were required, for the first time, to build something between them on screen. And what the audience saw was not two actors performing a relationship. It was two men who already had one. The chemistry was immediate and unmistakable. Critics noticed it. Audiences noticed it. And so, 3 years later, in 1982, the same team brought them back for The Shadow Riders, another L'Amour adaptation, this time playing brothers who had fought on opposite sides of the Civil War, Sam for the Confederacy, Tom for the Union, and must work together to rescue kidnapped family members. In the opening scene, Tom's character saves Sam's from a lynching. The two brothers look at each other across a decade of separation and a war that was supposed to have made them enemies, and they simply move on. They get on their horses and ride. People who love Westerns still talk about those two performances. There was something in them that felt less like acting and more like two men who had spent enough time around each other to know exactly how to listen and when to move. Sam Elliott and Tom Selleck, the critics agreed, were simply made for the genre, and the fact that they genuinely liked each other was visible in every frame. By the early 1980s, Tom Selleck's career made one of the most dramatic turns in television history, and it nearly didn't happen at all. He had been cast as Indiana Jones. He had actually gotten the job. But CBS held him to his Magnum PI contract, and Tom had to turn down the role that would eventually go to Harrison Ford and become the defining action franchise of the decade. The story of how close Tom Selleck came to being Indiana Jones has been told many times, but what gets less attention is the particular cruelty of the timing. While Tom was in Hawaii waiting for the writers' strike to end so Magnum could begin production, Raiders of the Lost Ark was filming nearby. He could have done both. The logistics would have worked. The contracts did not. He later said he made peace with it. Whether that is entirely true is between Tom and whatever quiet hours he keeps. What is certainly true is that Magnum PI turned out to be one of the defining roles of the decade on its own terms. A character with charm and depth and a mustache that owed something to Sam Elliott's influence, whether either man would admit it. The show ran from 1980 to 1988 and made Tom Selleck one of the most recognized faces in the world. He won a Golden Globe. He won an Emmy. He became the template for a certain kind of masculine warmth, capable and funny, and not entirely comfortable with being as good-looking as he was. During those years, he also narrowly missed Baywatch, which had been offered to him as his next television vehicle after Magnum wrapped. He passed. The role went to David Hasselhoff. Tom went and made movies instead, among them the Western Quigley Down Under, which stands as one of his most purely enjoyable performances, and which he has referenced repeatedly in recent years as the kind of work he wants to return to. Sam, meanwhile, was building a resume that had its own particular shape. Roadhouse in 1989, Tombstone in 1993, where he played Virgil Earp in a film that Tom's friend Kurt Russell anchored. The Big Lebowski in 1998, where Sam appeared as a laconic narrator who somehow made the whole strange universe of that film feel grounded. Each of these roles added something to the particular mythology Sam Elliott was constructing around himself, not through grand gestures, but through an accumulation of quiet, credible authority. The two men stayed in each other's orbit through all of it. The industry is large, but the world of working Western actors is not, and Tom and Sam kept finding their way back to the same conversations, the same appreciation for the same kind of story, the same understanding of what it means to do this work seriously and for a long time. In 2021, Sam Elliott did something that changed the way a new generation of viewers saw him. He joined the cast of 1883, Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone prequel, for Paramount Plus, playing Shay Brennan, a Civil War veteran turned Pinkerton agent, escorting wagon trains of immigrants across the brutal American frontier. It was the largest, most layered role Sam had taken in years, and he filled it with the particular gravity of a man who has spent 5 decades learning how to carry a character without showing the effort. Tom watched it happen from his position at Blue Bloods, where he was 14 seasons deep into playing Police Commissioner Frank Regan, the aging patriarch of a New York City law enforcement dynasty. The two shows could not have been more different in setting and tone, but the instincts required to play those characters were not so far apart. Two older men, built by experience, carrying the weight of institutions they believed in. Tom has talked about Sam's work in 1883 with the particular enthusiasm of someone who was not remotely surprised, but was delighted anyway. Sam was great in 1883, Tom told Parade in late 2024, just as Blue Bloods was heading into its final episodes. Sam's always great. We go way, way back. I love him dearly. "I'd love to work with Sam." He said it simply, without embellishment, the way you talk about someone when the affection is so old and so settled it doesn't require decoration. The timing of that statement matters. Tom made it during what was, by any measure, one of the harder periods of his professional life. Blue Bloods had been canceled by CBS in November 2023, after 14 seasons and nearly 300 episodes. Tom had fought for the show. He had spoken publicly about his frustration in terms that were pointed for a man who generally keeps his views close. "I will continue to think that CBS will come to their senses," he said at one point. "We're the third highest scripted show in all of broadcast. We're winning the night." The network did not come to its senses. The show ended in December 2024. Tom Selleck was 81 years old, and for the first time in decades, not working. The transition was not smooth. People who know Tom well said he struggled in the months after Blue Bloods wrapped. He had spent 14 years commuting between his California ranch and New York City, building his life around the schedule of a network drama, and suddenly that structure was gone. He threw himself into the physical work of the ranch, repairs, maintenance, the kind of labor that keeps a 63-acre property functional. Friends and family grew worried. He was working himself hard in ways that didn't seem like rest. He was, in the words of people close to him, down in the dumps. Sam Elliott called. "This is perhaps the most Tom and Sam thing that could have happened. Not a public gesture, not a statement released through publicists. One old friend picking up the phone and reaching out to another, because that is what you do when you have known someone for nearly 60 years and you can tell they need it." Sam had been through his own periods of uncertainty in the business, stretches when the phone didn't ring and the waiting was its own particular grind. "I've had those periods in my career when I was sitting around waiting for a phone call," Sam has said. "It's a frustrating game. That's the downside of this business, the rejection." He knew what Tom was feeling because he had felt it himself, and he was not going to let his friend sit alone with it. The two men reconnected properly in the months that followed. Tom began to pull out of the funk. He signed with United Talent Agency in December 2025, a move that sent a clear signal to the industry. He was not finished. He was reorganizing. He had been talking for years about a new Jesse Stone television movie, revisiting the small-town police chief character he had played across 9 films. He had also made no secret of his desire to work with Taylor Sheridan, the creator of 1883, on something in the Western genre. "A good Western's always on my list," Tom told Parade. "I miss that. I want to sit on a horse again." The implication was clear to anyone paying attention. 2 men, 1 genre. The conversations between Tom and Sam, by all accounts, had turned to exactly this possibility. It is worth pausing here to consider what Tom Selleck and Sam Elliott mean to the Western as an American art form, not as icons or symbols, which is how lazy writing tends to handle them, but as practitioners. Both men understood from early in their careers that the Western is not primarily about horses and guns and wide landscape, even though it contains all of those things. It is about a particular kind of moral code being tested by circumstance. The hero of a Western is not simply the fastest or the strongest. He is the one who does the right thing when doing the wrong thing would be considerably easier. Tom and Sam both understood this instinctively, and it is why their best work in the genre feels less like entertainment and more like argument, a sustained case for the idea that integrity is worth something, even when it costs you. Tom's Quigley Down Under is perhaps the purest expression of this. He plays a man who travels to Australia for work, discovers that the man who hired him wants him to kill indigenous people, and refuses, not with a speech, not with elaborate moral deliberation, but simply by standing up and walking away from the money. Sam's Shea Brennan in 1883 carries a similar weight. A man who has lost everything, who has no particular reason left to be decent, and who chooses decency anyway because it is the only version of himself he recognizes. These are not accidental convergences. They are the result of two men who have spent their entire adult lives thinking seriously about what it means to play a good man, and who found in each other someone who was thinking about the same things. Tom has talked about Sam with something close to reverence when describing the clarity of his friend's creative vision, the sense Sam always seemed to have of exactly what kind of actor he wanted to be. Sam had a much more cohesive idea of where his life was heading, Tom has said. It never read as insecurity from Tom. It read as the honest observation of a man who found his own path more circuitous and is genuinely glad that his friend found his more directly. Sam, for his part, has spoken about Tom with the particular warmth of someone who respects the work and the man equally. He married Catherine Ross in 1984. They had originally connected on a film set years before, and together they have built a life in Malibu that is, by Hollywood standards, remarkably private and stable. Their daughter Cleo is a musician. Sam has said that family and work are the two things that have always organized his life, and that he doesn't see much reason to complicate that arrangement. Tom, who has been married to Jilly Mack since 1987, understands this entirely. Both men built their lives around their ranches and their families, and a straightforward commitment to the work. They are, in ways that matter, very similar people. At 81, Tom Selleck has finally said clearly and without qualification what he feels about Sam Elliott. It is not complicated. It does not require unpacking. It is what it has always been, an old friendship between two men who found each other at the beginning of everything and never quite let go. Some things in Hollywood are built to last a season. Some things, it turns out, last 60 years. Now it's time to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below. Who do you think is the more compelling Western actor? Tom Selleck or Sam Elliott? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.